Hey, and welcome to Making an Auto Mortar. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm terribly excited by this one because look, we're going to make a Dalek-like auto mortar thingy. Pretty ugly, I know, it's a placeholder asset that's actually going to shoot at us, and it's going to use exactly the same aiming component and AI controller as the tank does. We're not even going to open Visual Studio in this video. So, well, we are because we're going to fix the tank aiming bug, but after that, we're not going to reopen it, so I'll see you in there. I can't wait to get into this challenge. It's going to be amazing to be reusing our code from the previous section. So from the tank aiming component and the tank AI controller. I'm going to get rid of the AI tanks. We're not really talking about AI tanks here. We're talking about mortars. And I'm also just going to move this player start point. One way would be to go to the top view, move it over here somewhere, maybe then go to the left view, bring it down to near the ground, back to perspective, check it all works, and there's our tank. So this can be our playground for the auto mortars. Now, before I carry on, let's look at where negative X is in the world. Negative X is behind me, kind of along the line of this shadow, directly behind me if you look at this down the bottom left here. Let me show you a bug with the aiming. I mentioned it a few videos ago with a voiceover and an annotation, about 3 videos back. Now I want to show you it. When I aim to negative X in the world space, we get a problem with our aiming. Now let's just find out which way is negative X. It's a bit further round. There you go. As soon as I get to negative X, look what happens. It starts going completely the wrong way. And if I let the barrel move all the way to just before I'm pointing down negative X, let's go right a little. Look at that. Goes completely the long way round. How silly. So let's go into Visual Studio. In fact, it's the last time we need to go into Visual Studio for this challenge. And what we need to be doing is, rather than just saying delta rotator.yaw is less than 180, what we need to be doing is putting in the fmath abs. I forgot that previously. So this takes the absolute value of the yaw and asks the question, is the absolute value of the yaw less than 180? If it is, we yaw. Otherwise, basically, we avoid going the long way by going backwards. So if we get a delta rotator.yaw out that is more or less than minus 180 or more than 180, then that's silly. We're trying to go the wrong way round. So what we do is we just go the other way. So this tests for values of more than 180. Reflex angles, I think you call them. Okay, so what you want to put in is fmath abs around the delta rotator.yaw. Let's compile that up. And I will confidently close Visual Studio because for your project and for getting the auto mortar working, we don't even need to open Visual Studio because our code is going to be reusable. Okay, let's see if we exhibit the same behavior now as we point towards minus X. I think you can already see that we're not. The barrel hasn't started changing direction at all. Perfect. So we fixed the aiming code. That's quite an important aspect before you start this challenge. Let me just show you the code change. It's simply that and a comment. Okay, fantastic. So I think that you can assemble the auto mortar yourself. If you look in the lecture resources, we have a mortar placeholder.zip file. If you go open that mortar placeholder.zip file in your downloads, you'll find it has a body, which corresponds to the tank's body, a dome, which corresponds to the tank's turret, and a barrel, which corresponds to the tank's barrel. There's also the blender file I used to make this ugly placeholder asset in case you want it or in case you want to make it prettier. Maybe later in the section, if a student makes a great mortar, we'll replace it. That would be good. So they are the parts that you're going to need. Now, if we look at the tank blueprint just briefly, before I put you into your challenge, you'll realize that we can make up this mortar in a very similar way. That will be the body, which is just a cylinder. This will be the dome, and then the barrel will become the barrel. Now, when you do it, your base object is going to want to be the body, and it's going to be a static mesh, just like the tank. Then we're going to have the dome, which will be of type tank turret. Use the tank turret type, because of course it's got code in it. We'll rename all these things later once we've proven that we're able to repurpose them. So you'll have a static mesh called body at the base, then a turret, and then a barrel, also of type tank barrel. No left track, no right track, no movement component, but we will have a tank aiming component. And then we'll initialize it just like we did before. Not the movement component, but this stuff here, we will initialize by pointing it to the barrel and the dome. And then on the tank aiming component, on the tank itself, which will actually be a mortar in this case, and it'll be at this level, you will be able to choose the AI controller class, and you'll see that previously in the tank, it's set to tank AI controller, the C++ class. Just do the same thing. Okay, fantastic. I think that's enough of an overview and enough clues for you. Also, you're going to want to use sockets. So the body's going to want a socket in a very similar place, in the top, in the middle. Then the dome's going to want a socket in the middle of the dome, touching the body there. Well, it's not going to have a socket, but it's going to attach to that socket on the base. And then 20 centimeters above the center of the cylinder is where I put my socket for my barrel. So that's the only thing you need to know. You have one socket on the bottom of the body, and then you attach the dome to that, and then 20 centimeters up inside the dome, right in the center of it, I have a barrel socket. So, great integration challenge for you coming up. You're going to use all of the knowledge that you've used so far, almost, and assemble the auto mortar. So look at how the tank blueprint's constructed. Put the mortar together in a very similar way. Use the tank aiming component, associate it with the tank AI controller. Don't worry, we'll rename these classes that no longer make sense a little bit later, make them more generic, but let's prove they're reusable first. And as a bonus, get the auto mortar actually working. So all I want you to do is just assemble the sockets and parts, but if you can go as far as getting it actually working and placing a couple in the world, then good job to you. This gives you lots of scope. If all you manage to do is import a single static mesh, I'm happy. If you can get it working, I'm even more happy. It doesn't matter, just work to your ability. So go ahead, take your time, see if you can make it work, see if you can put all the information together, and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, welcome back. Let's get this done. I'm not 100% sure I better get this done in this video. So if we get to 15 minutes, I'll stop and split it into another video. Nice and simple. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a folder. And I'm just going to call it mortar. And then I'm going to go to this mortar folder and I'm going to import some assets. And I'm going to go get those assets from my downloads. And they're not there because I haven't unzipped the zip file. So it's very simple. Not rocket science. How do you unzip a zip file? Extract all. I'm used to the Mac. There you go. So now we have it. Let's import all of them. Why not? Now I'm going to import all confidently. It's telling me there's no smoothing information, but I don't mind. Here we go. We've got the parts. Now, because I've set the origins of these parts properly, we should be pretty simple to assemble. So let's make a new blueprint, new empty blueprint class. Now, what did you do when you got here? What type did you base this on? Did you do it on Actor? Well, that would have been reasonable, but the problem is that if you used Actor, then you wouldn't have been able to access any of the AI code for the aiming, so we do actually need Pawn. So if you chose Actor, it's not a problem. Let me show you how to change it once I've made this class. Auto Mortar or just Mortar? I'm just going to call it Mortar BP. So there's my Mortar BP. If you chose the wrong class, go to Class Settings, Parent Class, and just change it there. Nice and simple. Okay. Great, so what are we going to do? We're going to add a static mesh to start with. That static mesh is going to be called the body. I can make it the root component, so dragging it over the default scene root, there it is. Go and choose the body, mortar body, there it is. And that's the beginnings of it. So there you go. We'll put a material on this in a minute. Now, I'm going to add a turret, tank turret. Of course, we need to change the name of that later, but that's okay. I'm going to call it Dome, but it is of type tank turret, because that's got code with it, it does something, it's a rich class. And then where's this dome going to go? Currently, well, it doesn't even have a mesh, so let's add the mesh on the right-hand side under details. May not be on the right for you, but I don't want to position it like this. What I want to do is go to the body, and I'm going to add a socket under the socket manager. You can get that from the window menu. I'm going to call it dome, and I'm going to position it roughly by eye, and then realize that I scaled these things nicely for you. So it is actually 2 meters high, or 200 centimeters off the ground. So that socket's at 0, 0, 200, and let's just eyeball that. There it is, WSAD, while holding the right mouse button, is how I'm moving around. Great. So back to the mortar blueprint. Where do we want this dome? We just choose the parent socket, dome. That will only be in your list if you've correctly childed the dome to the body. Now, if you still have an offset, it's because you have a location. The dome wants to have no location, 0, 0, 0, and then it wants to be parent socketed to the dome socket of the body, and the dome needs to be a child of the body. Okay, let's go again. We have a barrel class, don't we? Let's take the tank barrel class, child it to the dome, call it a barrel. Now we better go, before we try and position that barrel, we'll give it a barrel static mesh, mortar barrel. There it is. Don't try and position it in here. In fact, you should probably reset its location in here. That looks roughly right, but don't be fooled. It's not right. We need to go to our mortar dome, create a socket, and I said I put that 20 centimeters up from the center in the middle. Now you can put it where you like, but I'm putting it 20 centimeters up like that. Save it. And back to the mortar blueprint, we can socket it. Off we go. Great. Now you can test this whole guy by going into the rotate mode with the E key, and you notice that if you childed right, that the top moves around and takes the barrel with it, and that the barrel rotates like that. So we have the beginnings of it. I'm just going to apply a rust texture to all of this because I think that anything that sits out in the landscape for too long will become rusty. And this is what I call a placeholder asset. It's an ugly programmer's asset. We've put something together that's going to represent the function of the mortar with very basic Blender skills. And I've provided you with the assets. And of course, in reality, either you or somebody else needs to go off and get much better skills, unless you're going for this art style, if you can call it that. So we have those bits together. That's pretty cool, isn't it? So what do? Well, we go into the event graph and we need to run the initialize, don't we? So how do we do that? Well, we need to get an aiming component. So I'm adding an aiming component to the mortar, bringing its reference in, and finding the initialize method. There it is. When do we do it? On begin play. How do I know? Because it's what we do on the tank. Right here. Okay, so that's that. Now, what is the barrel to set? Well, it's the barrel. Now, it'll only accept this type with a tick like this if your barrel is of type tank barrel. If it's of type static mesh, it ain't going to work. And the same with the dome. Now, it's not a turret, it's a dome, but it's close enough. We know what we're doing. It's an analogy. And there we are. So we have that all wired up now. Now, let's click on the mortar itself. The other thing we need to do is not make it a standard AI controller, but make it a tank AI controller, so that it's able to aim. All right, now, I think it's time to go and try putting one in the world. Do we have a mortar blueprint? Where is it? I don't see it, so let's go search for it. Mortar BP, put it in the mortar folder. Just going to save all before we run anything, and let's dump one in the world. There it is. Now, what happens? Oh my God, it seems to be working straight away. Look at that. It's not going to work. It's not going to fire. It won't have a projectile. And we haven't put a projectile socket on it. So let's sort those things out. A couple of simple things. Back into the mortar blueprint, tank aiming, projectile blueprint. Let's use the same projectile. So that's that bit. The other thing we're going to need to do that we haven't done yet is on the barrel. We're going to need to make a socket called projectile. Now, this is the only time you may need to have dived into Visual Studio. Remember that we slightly uglily, if that's a word, string reference the projectile socket by the word projectile. So you best spell that right. Where are we going to put it? Just a little bit out of the end of the barrel like that. Is that the wrong end? Maybe. I don't think so. If it is, we'll just switch it round. Let's have a go. F11. Well, I'm getting scared already. So this dude is aiming at me. Oh, boom, and he hit me. Awesome. Now, is he aiming up? Let's just hit F8 and pause the game. Well, not even pause the game. I just depossess. I'm just going to go and have a look at him. I just want to make sure that his barrel is aiming upwards. Yeah, look at it. Off we go. Pretty straightforward, hey? Now, that is the power of using components. Now, okay, we called it a tank AI control, a tank aiming component, and we called it a tank AI controller over here in the C++. But that was good because at the time that's all they did, right? So there was no reason to call it anything else. You don't want to get into never gonna need it syndrome, which is where you start thinking you're solving all the world's problems in one go. But now we have proven that this thing can be totally reused without even having Visual Studio open. Now we'll go ahead and think about how to rename classes on Unreal, slightly more painful than it should be, and carry on with our project. So congratulations, and I'll see you in the next video.